in the word for word. Parajanya I recognized right off because there is a type of puja called a Parajanya Samskar that you do for producing rains. So I understood that word meant rains. And then the last word, Mada, not to be confused with the word Mudha, which is spelled very similarly, but with an H. Mudha, of course, means very foolish, ass-like. Prabhupada uses this word hundreds and hundreds of times. But here we see Mada without the H because of a joyful attitude. Very interesting how subtleties in the Sanskrit wording can change the meaning so significantly. Translation. During the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth produced all the necessities of man in profusion. Due to its fatty milk bag and cheerful attitude, the cows used to moisten the grazing ground with milk. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The basic principle of economic development is centered on land and cows. The necessities of human society are food grains, fruits, milk, minerals, clothing, wood, etc. One requires all these items to fulfill the material needs of the body. Certainly, one does not require flesh and fish or iron tools and machinery. During the regime of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all over the world, there were regulated rainfalls. Rainfalls are not in the control of human beings. The heavenly king Endradev is the controller of rains, and he is the servant of the Lord. When the Lord is obeyed by the king, and the people under the king's administration, there are regulated rains from the horizon, and these rains are the causes of all the variations of productions on the land. Not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when they combine with astronomical influences, there is ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Grains and vegetables can sumptuously feed a man and animals, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there is enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why do the people need cinemas, houses of prostitution, slaughterhouses, etc.? What is the need of an artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels? Has this civilization produced anything but quarreling individually and nationally? Has this civilization enhanced the cause of equality, fraternity, by sending thousands of men into a hellish factory and the war fields at the whim of a particular man? It is said here that the cows used to moisten the pasturing ground with milk because their milk bags were fatty and the animals were joyful. Do they not require, therefore, proper protection for a joyful life by being fed with a sufficient quantity of grass in the field? Why should men kill cows for their selfish purposes? Why should men not be satisfied with grains, fruits, and milk, which, combined together, can produce hundreds and thousands of palatable dishes? Why are the slaughterhouses all over the world there for the killing of innocent animals? Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira, while touring his vast kingdom, saw a black man attempting to kill a cow. The king at once arrested the butcher and chastised him sufficiently. Should not a king or executive head protect the lives of the poor animals who were unable to defend themselves? Is this humanity? Are not the animals of a country citizens also? Then why are they allowed to be butchered in organized slaughterhouses? Are these the signs of equality, fraternity, and nonviolence? Therefore, in contrast with the modern, advanced, civilized form of government, an autocracy like Maharaj Yudhishthir is by far superior to the so-called democracy in which animals are killed and a man less than an animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man. We are all creatures of Mother Nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord himself is the seed-giving father, and material nature is the mother of all living beings in all shapes. Thus, Mother material nature, has enough foodstuff both for animals and men by the grace of the Father Almighty, Sri Krishna. The human being is the elder brother of all living beings. He is endowed with intelligence more powerful than animals for realizing the course of nature and the indications of the Almighty Father. Human civilizations should depend on the production of material nature without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. This is but the life of hogs and dogs. Om Jnana Timirandasya Janan Jana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Ena Tasmai Sri Gurudeva Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangumlam Jayati Girim Yakripatamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarino Avanchakalpatirubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bahebacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My only constant companion, my only friend, my guru, my wealth, that which has delivered me, my great fortune, and the source of my good luck, the form through which I taste pleasure, my obeisances unto you, O Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this purport is just like, it's like a slap in the face. Prabhupada is just so powerful here. It's really one of the true classic purports in which Prabhupada puts forth the principles of devotional service and a life of God consciousness. Factually speaking, this purport is a collection of questions to the very way of life of our modern world, one right after the other, poignant, pointed, direct questions that Prabhupada asked and demanding answers with no real way to answer them. After establishing a very brief foundation in the front, Prabhupada goes on one by one to present questions of the very existence of the life that we all take for granted and accept as the way things are. Particularly in the secular world, all of these things that Prabhupada is challenging in this purport, one after the next, are the accepted way of life. They don't give any consideration. They don't give any thought of, well, maybe this isn't what it should be. This is the way they go forward day after day. And Prabhupada stands up and says, no, what about? And then begins this entire purport of one question after the next, challenging to the heart questions that beg to be answered by anyone with some thoughtful consciousness. Now, there's been many thinkers and social critics that raise many different issues about the world around them, the path of humanity. And in fact, over the years, this is what has been taken as higher consciousness. Persons like Plato and Socrates, Aristotle, Marx, Hume, Emerson, Aquinas, these are all seen as great thinkers that have brought forth questions judging the world around them. So many have questioned, but what have they given as a practical solution? One can question anything, but what is the solution that one has when giving that question? There was a book that Prabhupada did quite some number of years ago. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's not very well known. It was called Dialectic Spiritualism. And in this book, Prabhupada debates the philosophies of 36 prominent philosophers of history. He takes their ideas and disassembles them one by one, bringing forth in each case the superiority of bhakti. I don't think this book is in print anymore. If you can get your hands on a copy, Dialectic Spiritualism, Conversations with 36 Philosophies of the World. Amazing book. Prabhupada put it together over the course of time in conversations with different devotees. So in this way, even amongst the great thinkers of the world, Prabhupada pointed out their shortcomings because there was no bhakti. There was no consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, it's interesting, as we are in the earlier sections of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a chance to research and to actually hear how Prabhupada spoke on these particular verses. It's one thing to read Prabhupada's words. This is what he put. Actually, Prabhupada himself, we all know this famous story. I think it was Shruti Kirti came in. It might have been Hari, sorry, I don't remember. Came into Prabhupada's room and saw Prabhupada sitting there reading the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada and the devotee said to Prabhupada, "Oh, you're reading your books." Prabhupada shook his head humorously and said, "Yes, I like to see what Krishna has written," indicating that he well understood this was Krishna speaking through him. So it's one thing to read Prabhupada, but it's another thing to hear what Prabhupada would say when he would speak publicly on a verse. And because these earlier sections of the Bhagavatam are there while Prabhupada was still present, it's easy to go to the database and find these lectures of Prabhupada. 3 different times I found Prabhupada lectured on this particular verse in 3 different locations in 2 different years. And so we get an opportunity to understand the mood that Prabhupada wanted to present, not only through his divine purports, but through his personal speaking. And each of those times he spoke, he rallied on the same point, the importance of a proper leader setting the standard for society and thus setting the standard of reciprocation from Mother Earth. In the 4th paragraph of this particular purport, Prabhupada sums this up very nicely. He says, "Therefore, in contrast with the modern advanced civilized form of government, an autocracy like Maharaj Yudhishthir's is by far superior to a so-called democracy in which animals are killed and a man less than an animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man," in quotations. One would have to be blind and uninformed of our current set of political affairs not to see the implication of these divine words of Srila Prabhupada in our modern times. I'm not going to go into details on political issues, just as Prabhupada rarely did such a thing, but it is clear that we are dealing with these types of personalities described by Prabhupada here. Top, bottom, left, right, doesn't matter. It's the same type of mentality, less than animal men. This is what Prabhupada describes, his own words, less than animal men. Those who have elevated themselves, those who are on the path of prema bhakti, those who are attempting to not be controlled and impacted by these less than animal men, barely do these less than animal men have any type of level of realization or any ability to speak of moral, what to speak of religious behavior. So those of us who are attempting to separate ourselves from these types of actions, we have to view what is the character of these persons. What are, by their character, what are they bringing about? Excuse me. Now, we see that these may be very strong words from Srila Prabhupada. But we know Prabhupada was known for speaking such strong words. How do we know that these words are true? How do we accept this? Well, in one class that I mentioned as Prabhupada speaking, he gives a particular analogy, and I'll quote this for you here. He says, so due to a good king, this is the point. There is a saying that we have in Bengal, and that saying is a very important instruction, that if the king of the state is an impious man, a sinful man, that kingdom will never be happy. Everything will be spoiled. As much as in a family, if the housewife is not good, if she is contaminated, if the husband is not pure, if he is not exemplary, then there is no good life in the family. In Western countries especially, and in this country nowadays, there is no peace between the husband and wife. And there is, practically speaking, no family life. In Western countries, there is divorce. And now here in India, the divorce law is also introduced. So no family is happy. So in the same way, the king, he must be very pious. He must be very religious. Prabhupada continues on to mention, during the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira, he quotes this in the particular purport we're reading, during the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira, all over the world, there were regulated rainfalls that were regulated at the need of the earth. This is an important thing that we're missing in our modern cultures. They talk about climate change and drought, things of this nature. This is because of irreligious leaders. Prabhupada continues, rainfalls are not the control of the human beings. The heavenly king Indradev is the controller of rains, and he is a servant of the Lord. When the Lord is obeyed by the king and the people under the king's administration, there are regulated rains on the horizon, and these rains are the cause of all varieties of production in the land. Now, of course, with our recent observance and celebration of Govardhan Puja, we know that sometimes Indradev, he forgets his position and he makes a mistake. Or in this case of Govardhan Puja, a very royal mistake, a mistake of heavenly proportions, as he is a heavenly demigod. And he gets himself into a very difficult situation. But it's interesting that when he approaches Krishna for forgiveness, what does he do? At the suggestion of Brahma, he moves forward with Surabhi, his mother Surabhi, in the front. So even Indra understood that Krishna is very kindly disposed towards the cows. Very kindly disposed towards the cows. Now, back to the point in this verse. Speaking of rainfall, there is no proper rainfall now. There is no proper nourishment of the planet, and there is no respect for the personality of Mother Bhumi. And as a result, what do we see? We see endless exploitation, endless destruction, endless pillaging, stealing of resources that we have no right to claim, and increasingly stealing only due to unchecked desires and lust. Because of these two factors being present in modern day leaders, what to speak of all modern day people, lust and unchecked desires, everything is exploited with no consideration of the result. These qualities, they show up at the very highest level of leadership, and therefore we fully can support the statement that Prabhupada makes, calling such leaders less than animal men. Now, this is a very insulting statement, but when something is so true, even if insulting, we have to accept it. We have to embrace the factual nature of the statement. So this is what Prabhupada is saying. Now, further, Prabhupada goes on to speak of what does proper leadership look like. It's not just a point of criticism, but it's a point of, okay, here's what's wrong, but here's what should be there. And he mentions, for one thing, that a proper king sees all living entities as the praja, as the citizenry of the kingdom. All living entities, not just the human beings, but the animals as well. And not just the animals. Prabhupada says in another purport I was reading elsewhere, but the trees as well and the plants. He sees all living entities as the children of the kingdom, as the brothers and sisters of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he does not have an exploitive mentality. No nature to exploit, to murder and destroy other species simply for one's own, as it says here, unchecked desires and lust. Now, Prabhupada continues, he goes on here. Why should men kill cows for their selfish purposes? He poses this question. Should not a king or executive head protect the lives of the poor animals who are unable to defend themselves? This is a quality of a great hero, that he steps forward and protects those who cannot protect themselves. Someone who is considered to be of good moral character does not only look after himself, but he sees others that are innocent and unable to protect themselves and stands forward to protect them against any unrighteous or illegitimate onslaught. Prabhupada continues, is that humanity? Are not the animals of a country its citizens also? Then why are they allowed to be butchered in organized slaughterhouses? Prabhupada poses this question. Okay, if you accept that animals are also part of the kingdom, then why are they allowed to be slaughtered? So you either have to accept the point and then by accepting that, question the existence of slaughterhouses, or ignorantly dismiss both points. No, the animals have no soul and they are not part of the praja. This is a very popular philosophy nowadays. You hear this from so many people. Animals have no soul, they can be killed. In some uneducated philosophies, it wasn't until earlier in the 19th century that it was considered that persons of different races had no soul. And in the 1800s, there was a question of whether women had souls. This is the superiority of ignorant men with no factual understanding of the real principles of devotional life, of the real principles of creation. Prabhupada continues, are these the signs of equality, fraternity, and nonviolence? Prabhupada is very bold in this. Now, this last question is very telling in the direction of peaceful living. People talk about these three things, equality, fraternity, and nonviolence, with great, great fanfare. They organize huge meetings and conferences and lecture opportunities and get up in front of people and speak. At these various assemblies and these lecture halls, it's always just after or just before they're about to sit down to a meal and devour the flesh of dead animals, while crying out for equality, fraternity, and nonviolence. This cannot bring about a peaceful society. Prabhupada has spoken so strongly on this repeatedly, over and over and over again. Where there is a society that is slaughtering needlessly the animals, there cannot be peace and happiness. And yet, people are very eager to talk about these subjects and very eager to try and change the direction of the world, but not so eager to give up these activities, to reform the life that they're living. Now, where I work, I share my workspace, if you will, with many persons who are avid hunters. I live in a rural situation, not like you all up there in the suburbs of Chicago, and everyone here is very avid for hunting animals. And the two most favored subjects of this practice are wild pigs, yes, wild pigs, and the gentle deer. And these persons spend their weekends in this manner and come to work discussing with great pleasure the activities of their horrible, just despicable so-called enjoyment. I'll spare you gentle-minded Vaishnavas the details, but this activity is a great source of enjoyment to such low-class persons, less than animal men. So How can such a society as that enjoys and takes great pleasure in the horrid slaughtering of animals like this have any peace, have any kind of enjoyment and happiness? It simply cannot be. Now, again, in the purport, Prabhupada points out the human being is the elder brother of all living beings. He is endowed with intelligence more powerful than the animals for realizing the course of nature and the indications by the grace of the Father Almighty, Sri Krishna. The elder brother. Can an elder brother gain pleasure and approval from the Father by exploiting and even killing his lesser brothers and sisters? There is no father that will agree to that. That this type of activity, oh, this is very pleasing to me. You have done away with your younger brother who is of no use. He produces nothing of value, therefore you've gotten rid of him. Thank you very much. No father will take that position. On the other hand, if that elder brother takes a protective mood, a mood of counsel, a mood of involving, a mood of shelter to that younger brother that cannot care for himself, the father will become very, very happy. So this is the point that's made. And Kali Yuga, we even see sometimes in the headlines where a sibling will take it upon themselves to kill other siblings in the family. These kind of actions tear families apart. Yet we do not question how the peace of the international world family is being torn apart by the existence of these rampant slaughterhouses and the killing of so many members of the project, so many innocent animals. So this is the scenario. In this situation, there can be no equality, no fraternity, and no peace because of the rampant violence. This is a point that Prabhupada is really hammering home here. So the only way that modern man can delude themselves into thinking that they'll get happiness is to disavow the instructions of the Lord and instead think themselves to be superior and at complete freedom to exploit all aspects of nature, all other living entities, and everything for their own enjoyment. This is the mentality of the mudha, different from that Sanskrit word at the beginning of the class, mudha. This is the mentality of the ass. They're not getting a productive result by continuing to do the same thing. There's a sign in my workplace, one of those like, encouraging signs. They put these signs up to prompt people to do better. And it has a very nice saying. It says, you cannot get a better result by doing the same thing the same way. Human society is looking for peace. They're looking for equality. They're looking for fraternity, but they're not willing to give up the activities that are standing in the way of achieving that goal due to their material desires and their unlimited lust. So this is not what real truth is. This is not possible to achieve. How do they justify such thinking? They assume it by pretending to act religiously, by deluding themselves that the character of their actions is actually in accordance with the religious principles. Now, in one lecture on these verses, Prabhupada gives an example, which I'd like to relate here, which is very pertinent here. He's telling the devotees, he says, you may remember one time when I was in the New York airport, a young man seeing us from a distance as sadhus, he came to me. So he introduced himself. He said, sir, I am a Christian. I am faithfully discharging my religious principles. And immediately Prabhupada's response was, no, you do not faithfully discharge the duties of your religion. So the young man was a little surprised that without any conversation, without any talking, immediately I charged him, you do not follow the Christian religion, although you say you do. No, he said to me, why is it that you say like that? Prabhupada said, I said very simply to him, do you eat meat? Yes, sir, I do. Then you're not a Christian. You are not a Christian. The first of the commandments is thou shalt not kill, but you were encouraging killing by eating meet. How can you be a Christian? You are not a Christian, therefore I say. So Prabhupada was very bold, even just in occasionally meeting someone. He immediately would go to this point. We've seen this time after time in Prabhupada's lectures and Prabhupada's conversations with different personalities in Prabhupada's writings, that he immediately goes to this point. If you're killing animals, you're not a Christian because you're not following the commandments. So Prabhupada continues. He says, everyone, they're very proud of being a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, but no one is following their religion. No one is following. Therefore, I say they're all bogus. Because if they would follow, they would behave properly. We don't say to follow this religion or that religion, but if actually you would follow a religion, then the symptoms would be that you would become a devotee of God, a lover of God. As soon as you become a lover of God, you become fully qualified with all good qualifications. So this is the test. He hasn't got to be trained up how to be honest, how to be clean, how to be this or that. It doesn't need to be done separately. If one follows the principles of religion and becomes a lover of God, all of these qualities automatically come. So Prabhupada's he's setting the basic standard here. If you want to become God conscious, if you want to have good qualities, then you follow these religious principles, and this will come by that activity, by following that path. Now, Prabhupada continues another point in this same conversation. He says, so Dharma is so strong. Dharma means that you abide by the order of Krishna. If we remain faithful to Krishna and do what Krishna says, if we do that, that is perfect Dharma. This is a first-class religious system. We do not decry any system of religion. We do not say that the Hindu religion is better than the Christian religion. We do not say that the Christian religion is better than the Muslim religion. The followers of the so-called Christian religion, they're also nonsense, as are the followers of Hinduism who do not follow strictly. Why should we give preference to one class of rascals and fools over another? We have no idea that the Hindus are better than the Muslims who are better than the Christians, or that the Muslims are better than the Christians. We do not think like this. We want to test how much is one a devotee of God? How much has one developed God consciousness in their life? Then we accept, yes, that is Dharma. This is the real test. So Prabhupada establishes here what is not religion, but then, as he has earlier in the purport here, he then establishes what is real religion, how one can define it, and how one can understand it. He doesn't simply negate. This isn't, no, that's not good, that's not good, that's not good, but I have no answer. No, Prabhupada has the answer. He negates what is improper about society, but then gives the proper conclusion, gives the proper behavior, gives the instruction how to achieve it. It's very simple. So it's clear to us from Prabhupada's statements that it's not about what faith or what path one is on, but it's instead about the true qualities as a devotee of God that one develops in such a path. But how do we understand if we are on the right path? How do we understand if we're doing the correct things? This is a legitimate question that one can ask. Here again, it's very simple according to Prabhupada. He says that we develop the proper qualities, that we begin by proper practice to develop the qualities of a lover of God. Now, if we look at the instructions that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Sanatana Goswami about the 26 qualities of devotee, this is told in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, 7th volume. This instruction is there about what are the qualities that one develops. In that purport, the first quality mentioned is to be kind to everyone. The second quality is not to make anyone one's enemy. And if we continue down this list, number 19 is to offer respects to all others. And number 22 is to be merciful. So if we look at these 4 qualities out of the 26 qualities Mahaprabhu recommends are present in the life of one who is a devotee, we can see a scenario where Prabhupada is pointing out the relationship with modern society. the, as he says, less than animal men, is never kind to anyone. He may be kind to someone who he considers in his best interest. This is only seen if he feels that they will benefit him, but he is never kind to everyone. The less than animal man sees everyone as his enemy who opposes his own way of thinking. In the seventh canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find the instructions from Prahlad Maharaj that such mentality of this is my friend and this is my enemy, this is the mind and consciousness of a materialistic person. The less than animal man offers no respect to others, but instead expects that everyone should respect him, should kowtow to him, and should even worship him. The less than animal man has no mercy for anyone, but only sees how to exploit everyone else for his own benefits. These are four prominent qualities that a devotee develops, and four qualities that are completely lacking in these persons that Prabhupada describes as less than animal men who are running our societies nowadays. So therefore, we can easily see that this is not a society of saintly persons. This is not a society of lofty-minded spiritualists. This is not a society that can have any possibility of equality, of fraternity, of nonviolence. No, not at all. Prabhupada sums it up very nicely in the last line of this remarkable purport. This is but a life of dogs and hogs. This is how Prabhupada points it out. If you meet someone and after some conversation with them, you assess them and say to them, well, I can understand you're nothing more than a dog or a hog. This is the greatest insult. No one wants to be considered a hog. Hogs, Prabhupada explains, what is the activity of a hog? Well, the prominent activity of a hog is to eat any type of horrible food that's thrown there. They even are known for eating stool. Even in the Western farms where the pigs are all kept in pens in so-called comfortable life, what are they fed? They're fed all the bottom of the barrel stuff that no one else will eat. No one else will touch. If it's molded or bad or whatever, it's all thrown out there and they eat it. And where do they live? In the mud, wallowing just day and night in this filthy condition. And if we want to take it to the other extreme, we go to India and we see that where do the pigs live? They live in the sewers. There are open sewers in many places, and the pigs find it the greatest satisfaction to get down in these sewers where the water is running cool and thick and to settle themselves comfortably and let this cool water run over them. But what is that? It is the most despicable substance in there. It's the sewers. But the pig makes no consideration to this. And what is the other habit of the pig? Prabhupada points out, to have sex with any female, not to consider if this is one's wife or one's child or one's relative, but they have sex with any female. So these are the activities of a hog. And then the dog is the most disturbing. It's actually quite common that people keep dogs in their homes. The most common activity of the dog is to constantly be licking itself in areas that we won't in polite company describe, but you all know them, and then to very joyously come and lick the face of its master. This is the activity of the dog. Or to cause some disturbance by barking at everything unnecessarily. Now, in some cases, as a watchdog and some circumstances, all right, but, and then the dog is always, it has no understanding of where to relieve itself. Many times doing so inside the house or on the rug or, these things like this. No ability to be controlled. No ability to be restricted. No ability to be instructed. As Prabhupada says, we do not see that the dogs are coming to the universities and the churches to elevate themselves. So when Prabhupada makes such a bold statement, everything in these 5 paragraphs of this purport that he has rallied on, that he is questioned, he concludes that what are all these activities? Simply the activities of the hogs and the dogs. This is the way Prabhupada jumps in and makes it very clear that this is not a society that we, as practitioners of bhakti yoga, as those wanting and desiring to elevate ourselves in Krishna consciousness, should be anxious to take part in. So we've been blessed by these instructions of Srila Prabhupada. And with this example of Srila Prabhupada, and with the lifestyle that Prabhupada has shown us to free ourselves from the circumstance of being hogs and dogs, to free ourselves from the circumstance of being engaged in a lifestyle that can be completely questioned as to its uselessness. Instead, we enthusiastically and joyfully, we take up such instructions here and we embrace this glorious purport. This is one of those purports of Prabhupada we can read over and over and over again, that we can very happily embrace, that we can look at and try and understand the analytical nature of the modern world that we live in that is being questioned here by Srila Prabhupada. This is one of those purports that we can be very happy to take solace in. Now, the verse itself, of course, mentions the fatty cows, the cows and their fatty milk bags, and how those milk bags cannot contain themselves, and so they flood the fields. Nowadays, we find the fields are barely flooded properly with rain due to the global climate change. Rainfall is not proper, and as a result, the fields are not properly moistened with rain. But in this scenario described in this verse, the cows are flooding the fields with their milk. So happy were they. This is the importance. Prabhupada mentions in another one of these lectures he's giving that the cows, they have that sentient nature, that he gives the example of having seen a baby calf taken from its mother and the cow crying. So we have the opportunity in our farm communities, as per Prabhupada's instructions, to raise cows in an environment where they're very happy, where they're very comfortable, and where they very freely give so much milk. And that milk is used in so many ways. Now today, around the world, we're celebrating Gopastami. If you look on any of the social media, particularly like Facebook, for instance, you'll see devotees all over are posting so many pictures dressed up as cowherd boys. And this activity where the cowherd boys are given charge of the cows today is very happily celebrated. This was the life of Nanda Maharaj. This was the kingdom of Nanda Maharaj. Unlimited cows beyond our wildest understanding. And they were all very happy, all very protected. This is the type of Krishna conscious environment that we see, where the cows are so happy that even the milk bags are flooding the pasturing grounds. So we can celebrate Gopastami today if we have any opportunity to get near cows. Of course, here in Alachua, where I am, there's cows everywhere. There's cows down the street, there's cows at the temple, there's 4 or 5 devotee farms that have cows. I don't know about there in Naperville. I would imagine being a suburb of Chicago, there's not a whole lot of cows anywhere. But if we have the opportunity, we can at least find cows, do some service for cows today, and appreciate this wonderful celebration of Gopastami and the life of the residents of Braj. Back here to the Sanskrit wording again, Brajan, pasturing grounds of the Gava, cow, the pasturing grounds of the cow. So this is a very wonderful life and example of Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada has given us. This is a very wonderful process that we have, wonderful verses, wonderful association. And in this way, we can elevate ourselves to a higher state of consciousness to where we will not be accused of being less than animal men. So I'll conclude there. I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the most powerful purports that we can read of Prabhupada, and pray that you all have the opportunities to reflect on this today. And I'll turn this back over to you, Prabhu, if you have a question and answer system or whatever it is you do from here.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Devotees would be asking questions, unmute and ask questions if they have any.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for a wonderful class and really visualizing those things about hogs and dogs to make it clear.
Thank
Uh,
you, Sanjay.
my question is, when we take part in, like going for grocery shoppings, and we know that we are taking part in those bad activities because we are benefiting those grocery stores and everything. What should be our mood? Like, I feel sometimes guilty.
Our mood should be as instructed by Rupa Goswami, that we utilize everything in the service of Krishna. Prabhupada, he was revolutionary in leaving India. We all know that it's a common understanding that a sadhu does not leave the borders of India and cross the ocean. Prabhupada not only did that, Prabhupada did that, as he said, at the fag end of his life. In the early days at 26 Second Avenue, Prabhupada would say, I'm an old man, I can leave anytime. So at that elderly age, Prabhupada gave everything up to come and serve the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by spreading Krishna consciousness. So when we're taking part in using motor vehicles, when we're taking part in going to perform our activities of buying the bhoga, we have to be sure, how is this being engaged in the service of Krishna? Am I taking this bhoga and just going home and eating it? Or am I taking this bhoga and going home, preparing it, offering it to the deity in my home, and then taking that prasad, or inviting other Vaishnavas over to distribute that prasad? This is the ultimate benefit. This is the way to dovetail these activities into Krishna consciousness. Now, of course, we have a standard. One cannot say, well, I'll purchase some liquor and I'll have some friends over that are devotees and we'll drink this liquor together. And that'll be nice because it'll be this. No, we have standards we follow in Krishna consciousness. But something as simple as maintaining our household activities, not everyone can live on the farms. And even those that live on the farm, not everyone can solely support themselves just by what they grow. I have one devotee friend here in Alachua that's very well known for growing massive gardens. And when the lockdown started earlier in this year, he and his wife decided to see how long they could go before they had to leave the house and go purchase something. And they were able to go 5 weeks before they had to purchase anything outside the home. So not everyone can live this lifestyle. When I was living in New York City, or like you folks there living in the Chicago area, how is it possible to do something like that? So we have to be practical. We have to see what we're doing as a service to Krishna by connecting it to Krishna. That's how we become free from the karmic reaction of these activities going on all around us. Does that help you?
Yes, definitely, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. I am Sri Kishore Das. Thank you for such a beautiful, wonderful lecture on this wonderful purport, actually. I was thinking in terms of how can we actually practically apply this principle of, like Prabhupada was mentioning about kings like Yudhishthir Maharaj, who are able to do this dharmic ruling. So in today's society, as members of ISKCON, as members of society built by Srila Prabhupada, on an individual level or in the society of devotees, we are able to follow these principles of Srila Prabhupada. But when it comes to the general society, I don't think we are anywhere close to practicality where we can have a devotee king or a Rajarshi in place. Prabhupada, of course, gives the guidelines, but we also are, it is not that we don't want to do that, but we are also afraid in terms of going into politics. Devotees, how do they enter into politics? That is a big bag of filth. That is how we consider. And following in the lines of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, although Prataprudra was a great devotee, he always said that he is a Vishayi. I don't want to associate with him, for a long time, of course. So how is it, is it anywhere close that we are trying to build such a society at a larger level, not only in the society of devotees, but having a king who is able to do these changes in the society, that he stops the cow killing and all that.
Right, right. Well, this is going to be way before any of you had become involved in Krishna consciousness. It was back in I want to say 75 or 76. We had one devotee, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Balavanta Prabhu, who ran for president. And his efforts were not successful by any means, but in doing so, he was able to be seen in public with the tilak, with neck beads, and presented the In God We Trust party, the principles of religious following. Now, of course, we know that this wasn't to be that he was elected president. We know what the history of our country is. And in due course of it, Prabhupada then said, at any rate, it would be very difficult to change them. But Prabhupada encouraged like that. He thought it was a good idea to get the principles out there. At large, we do not see any immediate hope of a devotee president in this country, for instance. But what we have to do is look at the lesser of evils. And if we're going to take part, then we have to begin a gradual process. Okay, you have this, and this. So which is going to be the lesser of these evils? Okay, put that forward. And then refine down from there. Just like as a new devotee. Oh, I like the devotees, they're chanting Hare Krishna, but I can't chant 16 rounds. Okay, so you chant 1 round a day. We always encourage a new member. You chant 1 round every day. And then they say, okay, now I'm chanting 3 rounds every day. Okay, maybe you try 5 rounds every day. Okay, eventually they build up to 16. So in the same way, we start somewhere and then go. Oh, I can give up meat eating, but I don't know, I'm so attached to gambling. All right, so you start someplace. So in this way, there's a gradual process. Now, yes, there are those that can immediately take to the process. This was how our ISKCON society was filled back in the late 60s and early 70s. We just walked in the front door of temples and gave everything up. Immediately followed the 4 regulative principles, immediately started chanting 16 rounds, So that is there, that can happen, but not always is that the case. Now, regarding Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Maharaj Prataparudra, Mahaprabhu was a strict renunciate. And as a strict renunciate, he had those guidelines to follow. We are not in that situation. We are, even our strict renunciate sannyasis in our ISKCON, they have to mix with so many circumstances due to the traveling and preaching. This again follows the principle of Rupa Goswami, Yukta Vairagya, to use everything in the service of Krishna. So we have to be practical according to our abilities, and we have to be practical according to the choices in front of us, how to move forward. Can we expect that at the next election cycle, there's going to be a devotee president? Not likely. But we can expect to start refining things to, if we want to be involved, and not all devotees care to be involved, but if we want to be involved, to start getting people that have less and less bad qualities and more good qualities. So it's a step-by-step process. Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisance, all Srila Prabhupada.
Hi, Mohan.
Prabhuji, thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. Prabhuji, my question, I have to share some background before I actually put the question.
Go ahead.
Yes. And this has been bothering for me for a long time. So I grew up in a rural area from India. Fortunately, by Krishna's mercy, I got some education, was able to get into, come to America or get into corporate world and whatnot, right? But most of the family I grew up with, my cousins or friends and everything, they still remain in rural India, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they follow not so dharmic profession, right? Involved in non-dharmic profession. And it feels like, whenever I share the message, they feel like, okay, you're in a better position, you're able to survive, you're able to go through your livelihood, but that's not an option for us. And it feels like they're stuck in a situation where they cannot get out of it. And at the same time, my heart goes to them because, the destiny is going to be not so great for them. Maybe their life is going on well, but their destiny is not so great, reading Bhagavatam and whatnot. So what's the hope for people like that, Prabhuji?
Well, here again, it is a gradual process and it requires good leadership. Now, maybe in that particular village scenario, in an ideal situation under Maharaj Yudhishthir, he would see that these persons were taken care of. This was the quality of a king like Maharaj Yudhishthir. He would see that their activities were in line with Dharmic principles in such a way that they were able to take care of their livelihood and their responsibilities. We don't see that nowadays. So possibly on a smaller level, some type of good leadership, even if that smaller level comes down to an individual member of the family. So it becomes very gradual how this change can impact the entire world. Keep in mind that we are in the beginning of the 10,000 golden year period of Kali Yuga. This is the time at which the message of Mahaprabhu will begin to bloom and prosper and spread all throughout the planet. We are just at the beginning of it, so it looks very trying and even sometimes bleak to us. By the end of Kali Yuga, things will be truly bleak and trying, but that we hopefully will have way long gone back to Godhead and not have to deal with. But we see these things. So we are at the beginning of this golden age of Mahaprabhu. So we have to have a little faith, and we have to realize also that everyone has their own individual karma that they come into this world with. By taking to the process of devotional service, by taking to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, we can leave those binds, those boundaries, those restrictions behind us and move forward. This takes a little bit of faith. You've been fortunate to be blessed with that. It's not entirely due to the fact that you were able to come to America and get a good education and get a good job. That is not what facilitates your practice of Bhakti Yoga. What facilitates your practice of Bhakti Yoga is the sincerity in your heart and the circumstances that throughout your previous life had brought you to this point of embracing it. Not everyone will necessarily have that opportunity. So therefore, compassion and concern and encouragement is what we need to do in circumstances like what you're describing. We may or may not see the immediate results, but we can never be short. We can never be out of step by extending these to others and then let them follow the path that they feel inclined towards. This is the movement of Mahaprabhu, to give Krishna consciousness to everyone, whether they embrace it or not. Many of you have not had the opportunity to spend much of your life as book distributors. But when we were young men, daily we would spend 8 and 9 hours in the streets giving books to people. Not everyone took them. And some people that took them would take them and put them in their car or take them and throw them in the garbage. So not every opportunity that we came in contact with was going to be a positive result of someone reading the book and changing their life. But nonetheless, it was our duty, our responsibility to share that. So that became a very good lesson for many of us as we matured and became older and got married and families and so on, how to engage in Krishna consciousness, to simply put the effort forward and then let the result be up to Krishna. That's the suggestion, the recommendation I can put forward to your question. I hope it's helpful. Hare Krishna.
Oh, thank you, Prabhuji. That was very helpful. I think, it gives me some solace and hope for everybody I know. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Yes.
The fact that you have such concern shows that you're a compassionate, caring individual. So these are good qualities, that part of the 26 qualities that we have to develop as a Vaishnava. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So I see it's after 9 o'clock. I don't know if we have screen limitations here. We can wrap up. I want to thank all of you for inviting me to come and speak with all of you and share realizations from Srila Prabhupada's instructions to us about how to live our life. I turn it back over to you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for taking time out from your schedule and giving this morning class. So it was very wonderful class. I mean, very good purport, and then you stressed all the points that Prabhupada mentioned there. So we wish we will be able to hear more from you soon, and thank you so much for your time.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go to Vimanande.
Hari Bol. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.